Nation building in Islam, a perspective. The Emir, later King Abdullah I of Jordan, established a functioning state in a tribal society, but failed to create a nation. The state of Transjordan, and eventually the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, evolved into a satrapy in the service of the ruling Hashemite family. Throughout his active political life, Abdullah, in fact, was less interested in nation building than in nation acquiring. The raison d'etre of all Arab states that came into existence after the First World War was to promote the aggrandizement and ambitions of the individual rulers and their families, be they kings, emirs, or soldiers of fortune who usurped power through coups d'etat. Nation building in the Arab world has always been a contradiction in terms. In the Middle East, a mosaic of heterogeneous populations, loyalty was never seriously channeled towards a common allegiance to the nation. Kemal Atatürk's experiment in Turkey was the exception, but his Islamist-minded followers in power today are working hard to return to the status quo ante by surreptitiously doing all in their power to re-Islamize the state. Allegiance in all Arab and Islamic states continues to lie in the family, the sect, the tribe, and above all in Sharia, as it is interpreted by those in your sect. It follows, therefore, that allegiance to the higher ideal of a nation was never attempted, as it would have inevitably resulted in challenging the political legitimacy of the ruler, which came directly from Allah. Nationhood in its secular meaning presupposes a separation between state and religion, where the state applies one set of laws equally to all citizens, regardless of their tribal, religious, ethnic, gender, and sexual affiliations. This ideal is alien to the Muslim psyche, as Islam considers itself to be both a deen, a religion, and a dawla, a state, in one, and the two cannot be separated. A cohesive nation necessarily is a democratic nation. Democracy is not to be confused with rituals such as periodic voting at elections. The outcome of all elections in the so-called Arab Spring states has resulted in the replacement of one dictatorship, that of the Rais, the leader, with another, that of the Muslim fundamentalist party. Syria, in the throes of a destructive civil war, appears to be the next candidate to join the Islamic fundamentalist camp. True democracy is the end result of a lengthy historical process culminating in the emergence of viable institutions, an independent judiciary, a free press, a neutral civil service, emancipation and protection of minorities, freedom of all religions, and most importantly, freedom from religion, and the unconditional respect of the rule of law. As Professor Vernon Bogdaner of King's College London has put it recently, for democracy to survive, powers need to lie not with the people, nor with the legislature, but with the Constitution. To all Muslims and of the fundamentalist and literalist schools, well over half of the total populations, their undisputed constitution already exists. It is the Quran which, in their view, addresses and regulates all aspects of their life, and as such, there is no need to update it. By the 4th century AD, the constitution of the early Judeo-Christian era, the Old Testament, was deemed irrelevant to the modern times and was set aside in favor of a benign and less intrusive version, the New Testament, thought to be more likely to appeal to the vast majority of adherents. Over the following centuries, this new version was in turn assigned to the spiritual domain only. Will the Quran, a text of the 6th century with striking similarity in content and tone to the Old Testament, ever be updated to a new Quran to reflect the march of time and the monumental changes in societies in the 21st century? Highly unlikely. Not only because the Quran is the word of Allah, which cannot be altered, but also because of the absence of a higher Islamic authority, a church that speaks for Islam. In fact, everyone and no one speaks for Islam. Also, to those same Muslims, the debate on nation building is irrelevant, as in their view, the nation of Islam already exists. It is the Ummah, al-Ummah al-Islamiyah, and all that is required to bring it into existence is to reunite its dispersed component under a caliph and subject to the laws of Sharia. Since its 6th century, the West, on the other hand, has produced a Magna Carta, undergone a renaissance, a reformation, a scientific revolution, an enlightenment, and a number of popular uprisings and upheavals leading to the emancipation of all its citizens and their subsequent participation in nation building. The mind of Islamists, literalists, and their sympathizers is rooted in the 6th century. Democracy starts with the deliverance of the individual, and its foundation lies in the family, the building block of the nation. Nation building is the ultimate endeavor in a lengthy roadmap beginning with man building. Here, the West has succeeded in vanquishing the scourge of patriarchy and the medieval culture of machismo. It has established equality between men and women, a far cry from today's reality in the Islamic world, where the culture of shame, ar and aib, honor, in other words, and sharaf, mostly as related to female sexual life, and haram, forbidden by Allah, reigns supreme. The Islamic world is centuries away from this ideal. Armed with the West's blueprint, can it leapfrog a lengthy historical process and achieve in a few decades what the West took centuries to accomplish? So far, all indications point to the contrary. The region, in its current Islamic year of 1437 Hijri, is on the eve of the same convulsions and seismic changes that began to sweep the West in and before the same year of 1434 AD.